This is the CBS Evening News with Bob Schieffer substituting for Dan Rather, who is off.
Good evening. A federal magistrate today ordered John Hinckley Jr. sent to penitentiary for psychiatric tests and ordered his case, attempted assassination of President Reagan, sent to a grand jury. Fred Graham has details.
If John Hinckley did indeed attempt assassination to gain attention, his wish was granted as he arrived in a presidential-style bulletproof, bomb-proof limousine at the federal courthouse. Inside, reporters were frisked and a platoon of U.S. Marshals formed a protective wall. Hinckley wore a bulletproof vest and spoke only once to the court, agreeing to waive the preliminary hearing designed to establish if there were enough evidence to proceed with the case. His signature on the waiver was strong and precise. Both sides agreed that Hinckley is mentally competent to stand trial. Then the lawyers fell to wrangling about a more critical point, whether Hinckley was legally sane at the time of the shooting of President Reagan. Hinckley's initial court-appointed lawyer, now out of the case, explained.
Was the defendant mentally ill, suffering from a mental illness, at on or about the date of the alleged offense, March 30th, 1981? And if so, is there a causation or a connection between that mental illness and the alleged offenses? Did any mental illness that the defendant may have been suffering from diminish his capacity to understand his conduct in conformance to the law?
In court, Hinckley sat quietly, whispering occasionally to his lawyers, polite and seemingly alert. U.S. Attorney Charles Ruff asked to have Hinckley sent immediately to a federal mental institution for psychiatric evaluation by U.S. doctors. Hinckley's lawyer said defense psychiatrists should be allowed to see him first. Magistrate Lawrence Margolis ruled for the government, and the defense appealed immediately to Chief District Judge William Bryant, who approved a compromise. Hinckley was hustled into a military helicopter to be taken to a U.S. mental institution in Butler, North Carolina, where government and defense psychiatrists will have equal access to him. Fred Graham, CBS News, Washington.
Captain Gustav Niebaum sailed from Europe with a taste for adventure and a taste for fine wine. In 1879, he chose the Napa Valley, California for his great winery, Inglenook, a winery still known for its commitment to uncompromising taste. Come, taste Captain Niebaum's dream. Inglenook, the proud taste of California.
1948. Harry Truman was president. Joe DiMaggio hit 320. Gas was 25 cents a gallon. And Michelin came out with a new kind of tire, the Radial. Over the years, Radials have saved billions of gallons of gas. And today, more than half the tires on the road are Radials. Keep it up, America. The more we ride on Radials, the more fuel we save. Michelin's been making the tire for the 80s since 1948. Michelin, we put America on Radials.
Two House hearings began today on the effectiveness of the protection of the president, a question the Secret Service itself is reviewing. One of the witnesses was Treasury Secretary Regan. Bruce Morton reports.
Department of Treasury.
Secretary Regan said the FBI knew that Hinckley had been arrested in Nashville carrying 3 handguns on the eve of a presidential visit, but did not tell the Secret Service.
I do not know why that information wasn't passed on. In view of hindsight, it looks as though it should have.
William French Smith, the Attorney General, told reporters there were simply too many incidents like that.
Well, you have to understand that that what happened there happens with great regularity, and it's always easy in hindsight to pick out one particular occurrence and say, why didn't you say something about that?
But the head of the Secret Service told a Senate hearing this afternoon his agents would at least have interviewed Hinckley if they'd known about Nashville.
And depending upon the results of that interview, perhaps something more. It's difficult to project beyond that point what might have occurred.
Knight also said restrictions on domestic spying, the Attorney General's guidelines, the Privacy Act, the Freedom of Information Act, had cut the amount and quality of information about potential assassins the Secret Service was getting from the FBI and other law enforcement agencies.
And what is the primary hampering? I'd have to put at the top of my list the Attorney General's guidelines, which I think severely limits the FBI in their ability to carry out their domestic security responsibilities.
But the hero of the day was Jerry Parr, the agent who hustled the president into the limousine as the shots rang out. He got a round of applause. And when he testified, the senators listened like little leaguers hearing from Joe DiMaggio. Parr said everything was normal until the shots began and described what happened then.
When I went in on top of the president, he and I landed on top of the transmission riser that's in between the two seats. And he indicated that his chest was hurt. He complained that I had hurt his ribs in landing on top of him. So at that time, I told the driver to head for the White House. That's the safest place. And shortly after that, I would say in a space of 10 to 15 seconds, he complained of problem in breathing. He was getting a bit ashen in color. And then he started coughing up a little blood. It was bright red, and I knew from my training that this was oxygenated blood. This is the blood coming out of the lung. I told the driver immediately to head for George Washington, which we did.
And Parr spoke of Timothy McCarthy, the agent who placed himself in the line of fire.
I think what Agent McCarthy did was most heroic. It seems like to me from looking at the films that he made himself bigger than life and interposed himself between the assailant and the president, and probably saved the president's life or my life.
The senators all agreed the Secret Service had done a thoroughly professional job, and several seemed sympathetic toward Director Knight's plea for easing the restrictions on domestic snooping. Legislation in that direction, rather than towards control of handguns, may be what the attempted assassination will produce. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.
Incidentally, the Senate passed a resolution today commending Agent Parr and the agent and policemen who were wounded for, quote, their unselfish courage and patriotism. The doctors at George Washington University Hospital say President Reagan is making super progress, and Press Secretary James Brady has reported making satisfactory progress. A report on that from Leslie Stahl.
President Reagan got up and walked around today, at one point covering 50 yards in 2 minutes. He wolfed down his breakfast, say the doctors, 2 eggs and toast.
The White House brought in the hospital spokesman, Dr. Dennis O'Leary, in order to reassure the public that the president's life was never in danger. He did confirm, though, that when Mr. Reagan first arrived at the hospital, he was coughing up blood and having some trouble breathing.
The president did walk into the emergency room. It is alleged that he collapsed. He indeed went down on one knee. If that's collapsed, so be it. It's a kind of reaction that patients often respond to, develop when they have blood drawn. In no sense is that a clinically threatening situation, although the visual impact can really be quite striking.
Are you denying flatly that he was ever in danger of death?
I am denying that flatly.
The White House continued to deny any picture-taking of the president, O'Leary explaining that he still has 2 tubes in his chest to drain fluids and occasionally takes oxygen when he lies down.
Well, I think it's a combination of respecting his privacy. It is a medical preference not to, and I think it is the White House's preference. He looks fine.
Mrs. Reagan spent much of the day with the president, who did hold a couple of meetings. One with the vice president, who reported that Mr. Reagan looked very well, and another with Senators Baker and Laxalt.
His eyes are sparkling, his complexion's good, his spirits are fine. He told us that he wanted us to positively know that it hurts to get shot.
A lonely teddy bear sits and waits in Press Secretary James Brady's office, put there by his staff, who long ago nicknamed Brady the Bear. Doctors say he continues to improve, but they cautioned that a wide spectrum of possible complications could still develop.
The White House has begun an evaluation and reconstruction of who did what and when on the day the president was shot. Interviews with officials who moved into the Situation Room will be conducted to assess what some people say was a confusing setup under the direction of Secretary of State Alexander Haig, just in case anything like this ever happens again. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
The days of America's gushers are gone, but these old fields still contain oil, and this year Conoco is doubling its spending to keep them producing. Conoco pumps in water, steam, or special detergents to force out more oil, and this helps reduce America's dependence on foreign oil. Conoco. This year we're spending nearly $3 billion on energy.
The making of Taster's Choice. Take the best ground roast fresh perk coffee you know how to make. Then freeze it. To lock in all that fresh perked flavor when you remove the ice, you'll have rich, natural chunks of freeze-dried coffee made by a premium process that's unlike ordinary heat drying. Taster's Choice, regular and green label decaffeinated. The only leading coffee that's freeze-dried.
The Polish union Solidarity said today it has decided not to call a general strike on Tuesday. That development came after Poland's communist government warned a strike, quote, would have meant total confrontation, including some bloodshed. The union spokesman said this time it looked as if it was not a bluff. With Solidarity's cancellation of that strike, it first appeared that the threat of Soviet military intervention had lessened. But as Robert Pierpoint reports, the Reagan administration feels the threat is even greater.
Defense Secretary Weinberger set off the first alarms today over the situation in Poland in an appearance before the Senate Budget Committee.
I think the situation is and remains, as I would say, describe it, very serious, and one that certainly has the potential for far more serious long-range consequences. As the last few days have gone by, the situation has worsened from my point of view.
Later at the daily State Department briefing, spokesman William Dias was asked why this renewed concern over Poland.
The strike, as you know, was suspended, and it was not unreasonable, I think, to expect that the maneuvers which had been extended would then begin to be dismantled.
In fact, sources tell CBS News that the trend of military activity continues upward, with more units now participating, including more tanks on the ground and more Soviet ships in the Baltic. Intelligence reports also indicate this widespread activity will continue, possibly even expand. Meantime, Poland's Deputy Prime Minister Jagielski, here on a visit scheduled several weeks ago, met with U.S. officials at the White House. Afterward, Vice President Bush promised about $70 million worth of dairy products to help Poland out of its economic difficulties, and suggested more aid may be on the way if Poland can settle its problems peacefully. Jagielski emphasized his government's desire to do just that. But whether the Soviet Union will allow the Poles to settle their own problems peacefully is questionable. Discussing the stepped-up military maneuvers today, one expert said that April is the time for the Soviet army to move, before the spring ground gets too muddy and before the seasoned troops now on maneuvers must be rotated out. Robert Pierpoint, CBS News at the State Department.
The official newspaper of Nicaragua's Sandinista government today called the Reagan administration decision to cut off U.S. aid to that country, quote, Yankee economic aggression. The White House decision came after administration claims that Nicaragua is still supporting anti-government rebels in El Salvador. More on the Nicaraguan reaction now from Bob Fall in Managua.
Stunned and angered by the decision, Nicaragua still plans to build the biggest army in Central America, an estimated 35,000 strong. And to prepare against invasion plotted by forces loyal to the old government, the new government here is trying to turn 200,000 citizens into a national militia, would-be soldiers like Miriam Abey, mother of 4.
You get to love what we are living and what we are doing, and you want to protect it, you want to defend it.
And the revolution which toppled the Somoza regime 20 months ago needs all the help it can get because the economy is foundering. Inflation up 25% a year, cotton production down 20%. Jittery Nicaraguan businessmen have either fled the country or quit investing. Nicaragua's money is now so devalued it can't buy all the imports it needs. And workers from Honduras and Guatemala refuse to come here anymore to pick cotton. So soldiers and government workers have to be enlisted to do the job. The leftist junta which runs the country is building itself new quarters, but the Western diplomat here who knows the leaders best says they still haven't figured out how to make the transition from guerrillas to governors. So policy has been inconsistent, even erratic. Cuban advisors, an estimated 5,000 of them, are everywhere in schools, hospitals, the army, but they remain virtually invisible. Once, their presence, like the revolution itself, raised hopes. Now, with so many government promises unmet, disillusionment has set in. In the slums, which have not changed, One resident says, "Our life is not really better now than before." Grudgingly, Nicaragua's leaders concede the country needs aid. To get it, they softened their anti-American rhetoric and curbed the arms supply which had moved through here to Salvadoran guerrillas. Now they angrily accuse Washington of using Nicaragua as a whipping boy.
On top of this, you have the situation of the United States trying, some people and government trying to find a scapegoat to justify their policy in Salvador, and so why not use Nicaragua?
But moderates here say if there is no American aid, the voice of Nicaraguan moderates will be silenced.
I think that the government will use this as a way to say that all the internal problems is the problem of the United States. The U.S. is going to be the scapegoat.
With its economy stumbling and its political leadership badly divided between those who would like the government to control virtually everything and others who see a need for the private sector, Nicaragua is now at a crossroads. And many here think yesterday's decision shows that Washington is more interested in aggravating Nicaragua's problems than in helping it find solutions. Bob Fall, CBS News, Managua.
Increased fighting by Ugandan forces and anti-government rebels in Kampala has forced the United States to evacuate all dependents of American embassy personnel. The 5 women and 4 children were flown yesterday to Nairobi, Kenya. The U.S. Embassy spokesman there said the evacuation was purely a precautionary step, was not prompted by any anti-American threats.
Ooh. Got tough congestion? Sinex is the long-acting nasal spray that can give you a second of and 10 hours of instantly. Medicated Vicks vapors penetrate your nose with a powerful feeling of relief. And Sinex decongesting medicine shrinks swollen nasal membrane so air can flow through. You breathe free up to 10 full hours. For tough congestion, get the Sinex extra feeling of relief. A second of 10 hours of
I like having lots of horses, and I got them from Sears. Sears' new bold breed of lawn and garden tractors, up to 24 horsepower for most every purpose. Designed to ride smooth and handle easy. Even priced so big horsepower makes good horse sense.
Now save $100 to $500 on these bold breed models. Save $120 on this 10-horse lawn tractor, now $849. For power and performance, you can count on Sears.
Philadelphia Transit Authority negotiators and striking workers today announced tentative settlement of the 19-day walkout that left 400,000 commuters without bus, trolley, and subway service. No details on the agreement so far. In the Abscam trial of Senator Harrison Williams today, a secret FBI videotape showed the New Jersey Democrat rejecting a bribe to help a phony Arab sheik get permanent U.S. residence. Details from Chris Keller.
The FBI used a lavish suite in New York's Plaza Hotel to secretly videotape a final meeting between Senator Harrison Williams and an undercover agent posing as a wealthy Arab sheikh, Yasir Habib.
Sheikh Habib, Senator Williams. Very nice to see you again.
Williams seemed completely taken in by the act, even going so far as to speak to the sheikh in especially simple English. Williams, who wants the sheikh to invest in his titanium mine venture, assures him the project is going well. Then the phony sheikh asks a favor. The bait, special legislation to gain him permanent residence in the U.S.
I need something from you. I would welcome the chance to know you better and to support this effort of yours. I will say, I don't do this easily or lightly or frequently. It's an exceptional situation.
Williams explains that he can arrange for special legislation in the House. The sheikh then offers a bribe.
I would like to give you, some money for permanent residence. No, this is, when I work in that area, that kind of activity, it is purely a public, not a, no.
Another agent interrupts Williams before he can fully explain his rejection of the bribe. But the senator makes the sheikh a promise.
I can give you an absolute pledge. I will do everything in my power to advance your permanency.
The defense will use the same tape in an attempt to show that Williams was not given a fair chance to thoroughly explain himself. Chris Kelly, CBS News at the federal courthouse in Brooklyn.
The House Ethics Committee ruled today that Congressman Raymond Lederer, the only abscam defendant to be re-elected, had violated House standards of conduct. The panel said it would conduct hearings to decide what punishment to recommend to the House. Last summer, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights warned that police brutality is still a serious problem that sometimes triggers urban disorder. The report mentioned such major cities as New York, Philadelphia, and Miami. But as Steve Croft reports, the problem extends beyond the big cities.
You're at McAllen PD right now, all right? We don't take it you or anybody else around this place. You want to get smart, we'll bounce off you all off the wall all day long and then some.
The dialogue is straight out of a B movie, but in the McAllen, Texas Police Department on the midnight shift, it was reality. Watch the police officer crossing to your left.
You ain't saying nothing yet, shit.
The incidents were videotaped by a camera behind the booking desk. It was placed there to protect police officers from harassment suits, but instead, it documented a long history of brutality and police misconduct. The tapes, made available to CBS News by a federal judge, cover a period between 1974 and 1980. They show prisoners, many of them handcuffed, being beaten, punched, and kicked. Most of the victims are young Mexican-American males. When the tapes were played in federal court, the city of McAllen settled a long-standing civil rights suits. Judgments had totaled $400,000.
I've never seen anything like what I've seen on the tapes, and no matter how many times I see them, they still turn my stomach.
James Harrington of the American Civil Liberties Union brought the suit. He claims there was not only a cover-up by McAllen city officials, but also a whitewash.
Not one of the officers who was found guilty in any of the civil lawsuits were ever disciplined by any city official. Not one of them.
10 of the 24 police officers involved are still on the force, including the one to the right of your screen. A number of senior McAllen police officers have testified that city officials have known about the incidents and the tapes for years.
I have record that as early as '78 that it was brought to the attention of the mayor and the city manager both.
A federal grand jury has been impaneled in Brownsville to look into possible criminal charges against the police officers and against city officials. Mayor Othel Brand, in the midst of a heated re-election campaign, denies any wrongdoing.
And I spent my life working with boys clubs and Boy Scouts and girls clubs.
Mayor Brand claims he pushed hard for an independent investigation and says he is unconcerned about the federal probe.
I'm not worried about that because there's not been any cover-up.
Lawyers and police officers agree that it was peer pressure that fostered the brutality, that the department had become alienated from the community, and that policemen felt they had to be tough to be accepted by their fellow officers. Why it was allowed to go on for 6 years is a question for the federal grand jury. Steve Croft, CBS News, McAllen, Texas.
The staff of the Federal Trade Commission today recommended that the commission drop its 4-year-old investigation of television advertising aimed at children. The staff said the only effective remedy for the problem would be to ban the commercials. It concluded such a ban, as a practical matter, cannot be implemented. The stock market today, mixed.
I'm Johnny Bench. This is Krylon Spray Paint, the other leading national brand. And here comes my fast pitch, so watch close. Krylon Special Formula goes on smooth, just like a professional finish. And just 12 minutes later, it's dry to the touch. No runs, no drips, no errors. The other brand's still tacky after 1 hour. Let's see it again. Krylon dry after 12 minutes, other brand still tacky after 1 hour. Did you catch that? Krylon, for a smooth, fast professional finish.
In Hawaii, we call the gift of giving Makana Aloha. And for over 30 years now, the Friendly Skies have been giving the gift of Hawaii. We gave the Burmans a waterfall in Kauai. We gave the Dolans a sunset on Maui. Dave Smith got his golf course, and we gave the Millers their second honeymoon on 4 different islands. We've got a gift waiting for you, too.
In our little corner of the world, by the friendly skies.
A space agency spokesman said today the death of a second technician from an accident involving the space shuttle won't affect its scheduled April 10th launch date. 51-year-old Forrest Cole died last night in a Gainesville, Florida hospital. He'd been in critical condition since March 19th. After a mix-up in signals, Cole and other workers entered a chamber that had been purged of oxygen and filled with nitrogen during a fueling test. One worker died that day. Several others required hospital treatment. In 1855, when a siege gun warned seafarers approaching San Francisco, it was almost too much for a man. The soldier who first manned the cannon complained, "I cannot find any person to relieve me. I've been up 3 days and nights with only 2 hours rest. I was nearly used up." Well, today a machine took over the job, and some might say, there goes the romance. Barry Peterson reports.
From the time of the first mariners, there has been a compact between those who go to sea and those on shore who watch out for them. Point Bonita protects the entrance to the Golden Gate, the last manned lighthouse on the Pacific coast. Men to watch for rolling fog, to send out the mournful alarm that warned, go carefully or risk shipwreck and death. The first men were here before the Civil War, sounding a cannon when the fog rolled in. The cannon soon gave way to the foghorn. Men were here to guide the 3-masted ships come from around the Cape, carrying those hungry for gold. Men here to warn and sometimes to see their warnings go unheeded. No more. At a small ceremony, the Coast Guard decommissioned Point Bonita, saying in effect, no men are needed here anymore. They have been replaced by a machine. It senses the fog, it will turn on the foghorn, it will send out the warning.
The man used to do the job, and it was so romantic notion that now the machine is taking it away. They got a bigger switch.
Sheets will stay for a while to make sure the machine works properly. The lighthouse will still shine, the foghorn will still blow, but it will never again be quite the same. Barry Peterson, CBS News, San Francisco.
That's the news. Dan Rather has a touch of laryngitis. We hope he'll be back tomorrow. I'm Bob Schieffer, CBS News, New York. Good night.
How long does a John Deere lawn tractor last? 10 or 15 years is not unusual, which means with ordinary use, you could mow a path from New York, across Pennsylvania, through Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, Utah, all the way to the West Coast. Imagine mowing clear across America. Just think how many times you could mow your lawn. John Deere, you may pay a little more, but they'll last.
Hold it! The fan's blowing too hard.
Jane, don't be so impatient.
I know I shouldn't be, but my doctor says too much caffeine makes me tense.
You should drink Sanka brand decaffeinated coffee.
I like real coffee.
Sanka brand's 100% real coffee. Try it.
Delicious.
Jane, you did it again.
And I feel like myself again with Sanka brand.
Sanka brand. Enjoy your coffee and enjoy yourself.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Bob Schieffer substituting for Dan Rather.
I'm Charles Carroll. Secretary of State Haig leaves tomorrow for what could be an important trip to the Middle East. Details on...
A tight budget could mean less bus service at night and an end to weekend buses. The story coming up next on Eyewitness News.
I'm here to give you a peek at some new hush puppies. Aren't they beautiful? Who would believe shoes so stylish could be so comfortable? The secret is Hush Puppies' soft, cushioned soles and really flexible bottoms. They'll help your feet feel fresh as a daisy. And Hush Puppies aren't just comfortably fashionable, they're comfortably affordable, too. Why don't you pick out a bunch?
See the beautiful Hush Puppy collection.